Thanks for showing up for story time. It's 5 p.m. approximately on Saturday, March 23rd. It is still March and therefore still Women's History Month. And the first poet we're going to read tonight is Wislawa Szymborska, who is from Poland. She's very well known in Poland. She actually won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1996. And in awarding her that prize, the Academy praised her poetry, quote, poetry that with ironic precision allows the historical and biological context to come to light in fragments of human reality. So she's done a ton of collections of poems. And Stanislav Baranchak wrote of her in the New York Times Book Review, the typical lyrical situation on which a Szymborska poem is founded is the confrontation between the directly stated or implied opinion on an issue and the question that raises doubt about its validity. The opinion not only reflects some widely shared belief or it's representative of some widespread mindset, but also, as a rule, has a certain doctrinaire ring to it. The philosophy behind it is usually speculative, anti-empirical, prone to hasty generalizations, collectivist, dogmatic, and intolerant. So she's in a way speaking truth to power. Here is a translation by Joanna Tretiak of a poem that Wislawa Szymborska wrote called The End and the Beginning. After every war, someone has to clean up. Things won't straighten themselves up after all. Someone has to push the rubble to the side of the road so the corpse-filled wagons can pass. Someone has to get mired in scum and ashes, sofa springs, splintered glass, and bloody rags. Someone has to drag in a girder to prop up a wall. Someone has to glaze a window, rehang a door. Photogenic, it's not, and takes years. All the cameras have left for another war. We'll need the bridges back and new railway stations. Sleeves will go ragged from rolling them up. Someone, broom in hand, still recalls the way it was. Someone else listens and nods with unsevered head. But already there are those nearby starting to mill about who will find it dull. From out of the bushes, sometimes someone still unearths rusted out arguments and carries them to the garbage pile. Those who knew what was going on here must make way for those who know little and less than little, and finally, as little as nothing. In the grass that has overgrown causes and effects, someone must be stretched out, blade of grass in his mouth, gazing at the clouds. That is The End and the Beginning by Wislawa Szymborska. Here's another Wislawa Szymborska poem called Advertisement. And I will warn you, I've read this one on Storytime before, and it's so good, I have to read it again. It's called Advertisement, and it was translated again by Stanislaw Baranchak. I'm a tranquilizer. I'm effective at home. I work in the office. I can take exams on the witness stand. I mend broken cups with care. All you have to do is take me, let me melt beneath your tongue. Just gulp me with a glass of water. I know how to handle misfortune, how to take bad news. I can minimize injustice, lighten up God's absence, or pick the widow's veil that suits your face. What are you waiting for? Have faith in my chemical composition, in my chemical compassion. You're still a young man, woman. It's not too late to learn how to unwind. Who said you have to take it on the chin? Let me have your abyss. I'll cushion it with sleep. You'll thank me for giving you 4 paws to fall on. Sell me your soul. There are no other takers. There is no other devil anymore. That's Advertisement by Wislawa Szymborska. Here's one translated by Claire Kavanaugh called Consolation. And I love it because it's about reading, and it's about books, and it's about fiction. You'll see. Consolation by Wislawa Szymborska. Darwin. They say he read novels to relax, but only certain kinds. Nothing that ended unhappily. If anything like that turned up, enraged, he'd flung the book into the fire. True or not, I'm ready to believe it. Scanning in his mind so many times and places, he's had enough of dying species, the triumphs of the strong over the weak, the endless struggles to survive, all doomed sooner or later. He'd earned the right to happy endings, at least in fiction with its diminutions. Hence the indispensable silver lining. The lovers reunited, the families reconciled, the doubts dispelled, fidelity rewarded, fortunes regained, treasures uncovered, stiff-necked neighbors mending their ways, good names restored, greed daunted, old maids married off to worthy parsons, troublemakers banished to other hemispheres, forgers of documents tossed down the stairs, seducers scurrying to the altar, orphans sheltered, widows comforted, pride humbled, wounds healed over, prodigal sons summoned home, cups of sorrow thrown into the ocean, hankies drenched with tears of reconciliation, general merriment and celebration. And the dog Fido, gone astray in the first chapter, turns up barking gladly in the last. Consolation, that's the picture of it. Fido, gone astray in the first chapter, turns up barking gladly in the last. Ah, but if only life was, in fact, that way. Here's a poem called Plato or Why, published, I don't have a date on this, but it was published earlier because this came from Poetry Magazine before it started putting its poems online. So here's Plato or Why by Wislawa Szymborska. For unclear reasons, under unknown circumstances, ideal being ceased to be satisfied. It could have gone on forever, hewn from darkness, forged from light in its sleepy gardens above the world. Why on earth did it start seeking thrills in the bad company of matter? What use could it have for imitators, inept, ill-starred, lacking all prospects for eternity? Wisdom limping with a thorn stuck in its heel. Harmony derailed by roiling waters. Beauty holding unappealing entrails, and good. Why the shadow when it didn't have one before? There must have been some reason, however slight, but even the naked truth, busy ransacking the earth's wardrobe, won't betray it. Not to mention Plato, those appalling poets, litter scattered by the breeze from under statues, scraps from that great silence up on high. And that one was translated by Claire Kavanaugh and Stanislav Baranchak. That's all we have of Wislawa Szymborska. But we have other poets, including a poet from Argentina. We may not get to our Russian poets today, but we're going to have a good time anyway. Olga Orozco, was an Argentinian poet. And she wrote short stories. She was born in Toé, in the province of La Pampa. And she was a member of the group of prose writers of the last generation of Argentine letters. Her literary work, her short stories and her poems, represents a new version of the fantasy associated with infancy and its charms, and with the everyday. So let's read some of Argentinian poet Olga Orozco. This one is translated by Mary Crow. It comes in every storm. And don't you feel also, perhaps, a stormy sorrow on the skin of time, like a scar that opens again, where the sky was uprooted? And don't you feel sometimes how that night gathers its tatters into an ominous bird? That there's a beating of wings against the roof like a clash among immense spring leaves struggling, or of hands clapping to summon you to death? And don't you feel afterwards someone exiled is crying, that there's an ember of a fallen angel on the threshold, brought suddenly like a beggar by an alien gust of wind? And don't you feel, like me, that a house is rolling toward the abyss, runs over you with a crash of crockery shattered by lightning, with two empty shells embracing each other for an endless journey, with a screech of axles suddenly fractured like love's broken promises? And don't you feel then your bed sinking like the nave of a cathedral crushed by the fall of heaven? And that a thick, heavy water runs over your face till the final judgment? Again, it's the slime. Again, your heart thrown into the depth of the pool, prisoner once more among the waves, closing a dream. Lie down as I do in this miserable eternity of one day. It's useless to howl. From these waters, the beasts of oblivion don't drink. I love that last, or next to the last line. Lie down as I do in this miserable eternity of one day. Tiendete como yo en esta miserable eternidad de un día. It has a much more rhythmic and bell-like structure in Spanish itself. Unfortunately, I'm not a good enough Spanish reader to do that. And most of you are not Spanish speakers. So forgive me for reading her in translation, but she's very good in translation also. By Mary Crow, translated by Mary Crow, Ballad of Forgotten Places. And here it is. My most beautiful hiding places. Places that best fit my soul's deepest colors are made of all that others forgot. They are solitary sites hollowed out in the grass's caress, in a shadow of wings, in a passing song. Regions whose limits swirl with the ghostly carriages that transport the mist in the dawn. And in those skies, names are sketched, ancient words of love, vows burning like constellations of drunken fireflies. Sometimes earthly villages pass, horse trains make camp, a couple piles marvelous oranges at the edge of the sea. A single relic is spread through all space. My places would look like broken mirages, clippings of photographs torn from an album to orient nostalgia, but they have roots deeper than this sinking ground. These fleeing doors, these vanishing walls. They are enchanted islands where only I can be the magician. And who else, if not I, is climbing the stairs towards those attics in the clouds, where the light aflame used to hum in the siesta's honey? Who else will open again the big chest where the remains of an unhappy story lie, sacrificed 1,000 times only to fantasy, only to foam, and try on the rags again, like those costumes of invincible heroes, circle of fire that inflamed time's scorpion? Who cleans the window pane with her breath and stirs the fire of the afternoon in those rooms where the table was an altar of idolatry? Each chair a landscape folded up after every trip, and the bed a stormy shortcut to the other shore of dreams, rooms deep as nets hung from the sky. Like endless embraces, I slid down till I brushed the feathers of death, until I overturned the laws of knowledge and the fall of man. Who goes into the parks with the golden breath of each Christmas and washes the foliage with a little gray rag that was the handkerchief for waving goodbye, and reweaves the garlands with a thread of tears, repeating a fantastic ritual among smashed wine glasses and guests lost in thought, while she savors the 12 green grapes of redemption, one for each month, one for each year, one for each century of empty indulgence, a taste acid but not as sharp as the bread of forgetfulness. Because who but I changes the water for all the memories? Who inserts the present like a slash into the dreams of the past? Who switches my ancient lamps for new ones? My most beautiful hiding places are solitary sites where no one goes, and where there are shadows that only come to life when I am the magician. That is Olga Orozco's Ballad of Forgotten Places. There are many songs to Berenice. I'm going to read, I believe, Song to Berenice 2 and Song to Berenice 27. I told you there were a lot of them. But I'm not going to read them in order. I'm going to first read this one, Songs to Berenice, and I believe that the translations that I'm reading are from different translators too. This first one is from Mary Crow once again, Songs to Berenice 2. You weren't there on my threshold, nor did I go out looking for you to fill the hollows forged by nostalgia. Hollows that foretell children or animals created out of the substance of frustration. Step by step, you arrived through the air. Little tightrope walker on a plank floating above a pit of wolves, masked in the radiant tatters of February. Condensing yourself out of dazzling transparency, you came, trying on other bodies as if they were ghosts inside out, little anticipations of your electric wrapping. Sea urchin of mist, globe of inflamed thistledown, magnet absorbing its fatal food, feathery gust that spins and stops circling an ember, near a tremor. And already you had appeared in this world, intact, in your immaculate blackness from head to tail, more marvelous even than the Cheshire Cat, with your portion of life like a red pearl shining between your teeth. Cantos to Berenice, or Songs to Berenice. Here's one. Let's see if I can figure out who translated this one. This one's called For Emilio in His Heaven. It does not say who translated these. I do not believe it's Mary Crow, though. I'll find out for you next time. For Emilio in His Heaven. Here are your keepsakes. This mild blight of violets falling uselessly on forgotten days and hours. Your name, the persistent name your hand left behind on stones. The familiar tree, its sound always green against the window pane. My childhood so close. In the very garden where the grass still grows, where your head so often would suddenly rest beside me in the thickets of darkness. Everything's still the same. When, like now, standing at the far wall, we call each other again, everything's still the same. Here, pale, adolescent, lies your territory. Damp grassland for your clandestine feet, the sour taste of thistles, familiar frost at daybreak. Old stories. The earth where we were born, an identical mist hovering over our tears. Do you remember snow falling? So long ago now. How your hair's grown since then. And yet you still wear its ephemeral flowers on your skin, and your forehead bends onto the very same sky, so bright and dazzling. Why, like a god to this world, do you have to come back, bringing a landscape I loved? Do you still remember snow falling? How alone your dwelling place would be today, its iron bars and flowers behind useless walls. Left behind, its youth resembles your body. Now it will miss your too obstinate silences. Your skin as desolate as a country only visited by ash-gray petals that have watched for so long now the inexhaustible patience of ants going back and forth through their lovely ruins. Wait, wait, my darling. That's not the cold face of the terrifying snow, not the face of last night's dream. Listen once more, my darling, just once more. The sand's unmistakable scratching on the fence. Grandmother's cry. The same loneliness, its absolute truth. And this long future, staring at our hands till they grow old. That is for Emilio in his heaven. I'm going to read Song to Berenice 27 now, and then we're going to read some fiction. Though all our traces may be wiped clean like candles at dawn, and you maybe can't remember backwards like the White Queen, leave me your smile in the air. Perhaps by now you're as immense as all my dead, with your skin night after night hiding the overflowing night of farewell. One eye on Achernar, the other on Sirius. Your ears stuck to the deafening wall of other planets, your vast body drowned in their boiling ablution, in their Jordan of stars. Maybe my head would be impossible, my voice not even a void, my words less than tattered rags of some ridiculous language. But leave me your smile in the air, a gentle vibration to coat in quicksilver, a sliver of the glass of absence. That brief vigil, tattooed in live flame in a corner, a tender sign to perforate one by one the leaves of that harsh calendar of snow. Leave me your smile as some form of perpetual guardian, Berenice. And here we go. Translation, all those translations of those last two poems by Peter Boyle. And I think we have time for just one more. We are not going to do the Russians today, but there's always next week for the Russians. This one is called, let's make sure that I am having these in the right order. 4 and, yeah, that's right. 4 and 5 and 6. There we go. Okay, this is called Pavane for a Dead Princess. And it's for Alejandra Pizarnik. Little sentry guard, you fall once again through the fissure of night, armed with nothing but your open eyes and terror, against the insoluble invaders of the blank page. They were Legion. Legion made flesh was their name, and they multiplied the more you unpicked the fabric till the very last thread cowering in your corner against the voracious spiderwebs of nothingness. Closing your eyes means becoming the dwelling place of the whole universe. Open them and you draw the boundary line and you stay out there at the mercy of the sky. To walk on that line is to lose your place. Bouts of insomnia like long tunnels for testing every reality's inconsistency. Nights and more nights perforated by a single bullet that nails you into the dark. The same attempt to recognize yourself on waking inside the memory of death. That perverse temptation, that adorable angel with a pig's snout who spoke of spells to counteract the wound of one's own birth, who mentioned bribes for the emissaries of one's own future. Only there was a garden. In the depths of everything, there is a garden where the blue flower from Novalis' dream opens up, turned maybe into the snowman who contemplates the nothing with the nothing and who hears only the wind. With no gospel that mightn't be the unique sound of the wind, though maybe it will speak of the greatest possible bareness, not clarity. But I know that everything dark is only explored using the night I have. That the rock half opens before the rock in the same way as the heart is weighed with its abyss. Is there any other way of peering right down to the deepest subsoil, to the depths of another wound, of another hell? There's no other lamp for examining what's close, what's strange, what's distant. It's shown by the elusive meaning of the rat's squeal between its glassed walls as it slips on the ladder of some unconceivable light. The star proclaims it with its distant code that's tied to a certain trembling, maybe to someone's death, someone already gone. It's confirmed by the eye that walks with you and is memory wherever you forget, and by that vast glittering other that emerges for a meeting under the water of transformations, and sometimes isn't person or color or perfume or any trace of this world. Both are spun from the exact substance of silence. They resemble God in his version as reversible ghost. The soul that inhabits you is also the gaze of the sky that includes you. One moment. For passage across, clearly your enormous shadow that goes on flying above you in the search for another still holds you back. Or you meet an insect whose membranes hide all chaos, and you tremble. Or you're frightened by the sea that, so you think, fits into this single tear. But now that the silence has wrapped you twice over in its wings like a mantle, I tell you again, in the depths of everything, there is a garden. Your garden is there. Talitha Kumi. Those are poems by Olga Orozco, and I so appreciate her and what she has to say. It's transfixing and hallucinogenic somewhat, and the prose we have is somewhat transfixing tonight as well. We're first going to read The Debutante by Leonora Carrington. And it's a fascinating story, and I will let the story speak for itself. Leonora Carrington was an American who, for the story of how she got to Mexico is fascinating, and I'm not going to go into it today because I know most of it, but I don't want to mess it up. And part of the sort of panicked to get everything done after my plumbing job today. I did not get to print out her biography, which I will read you next time we do something by Leonora Carrington, which will be soon, I promise you. This one is called The Debutante by Leonora Carrington. When I was a debutante, I often went to the zoo. I used to go there so often that I knew the animals better than the girls of my own set. In fact, I went to the zoo every day in order to get away from society. The animal that I got to know best was a young hyena. She got to know me too. I taught her French and she taught me her language in return. So we passed many a pleasant hour. My mother arranged a ball in my honor, for the 1st of May. The very thought kept me awake all night. I have always detested balls, above all those held in my own honor. I paid a visit to the hyena very early in the morning on the 1st of May. What a bore, I said to her. I must go to my ball this evening. You're in luck, she said. I'd love to go. I don't know how to dance, but at least I could make conversation. There's going to be lots to eat, I said. I've seen trucks full of stuff driving up to the house. And here you are complaining, said the hyena disgustedly. I get just 1 meal a day and it's pig shit. I had such a brilliant idea, I almost burst out laughing. You could go instead of me. We don't look enough like each other, or I would too, said the hyena rather sadly. Listen, I said, nobody sees well in the twilight. Nobody will notice you in the crowd if you're a bit disguised. Anyway, you're about the same size as me. You're my only friend. I beg you. Done, she announced suddenly. As it was early, there weren't many keepers there. I opened the cage quickly, and a few seconds later we were in the street. I took a taxi, and everyone was asleep at home. In my room, I took out the dress I was supposed to wear that evening. It was a bit long, and the hyena had trouble walking on the high heels of my shoes. Her hands were too hairy to look like mine, so I found her some gloves. When the sun arrived in my room, she walked all round it several times, more or less straight. We were so preoccupied that my mother, who came to say good morning, almost opened the door before the hyena hid under my bed. There is a bad smell in your room, said my mother as she opened the window. Take a bath perfumed with my new salts before this evening. Yes, of course, I said. She did not stay long. I think the smell was too strong for her. Don't be late to breakfast, said my mother as she left my room. The most difficult thing was how to disguise her face. We pondered for hours and hours. She rejected all my proposals. At last she said, I think I know the answer. Do you have a maid? Yes, I said, perplexed. Well then, listen. Ring for the maid, and when she comes in, we'll pounce on her and tear off her face. I shall wear her face instead of mine this evening. That isn't practical, I said. She will probably die. When she doesn't have a face anymore, someone is surely to find the body and will go to prison. I'm hungry enough to eat her, replied the hyena. What about the bones? Those too. Is it settled? Only if you promise to kill her before you tear her face off. Otherwise, it will hurt her too much. It's all the same to me. Rather nervously, I rang for Marie, the maid. I would have never done it if I hadn't hated balls so much. When Marie came in, I turned my face to the wall so as not to see. I admit it was over soon. A brief cry and it was all done. While the hyena was eating, I looked out of the window. After a few minutes, she said, "I can't eat anymore. There are still the 2 feet left, but if you've got a little bag, I'll finish them off later." "You'll find a bag embroidered with fleur-de-lis in the chest of drawers. Empty out the handkerchiefs and take it." She did what I told her. Then she said, "Turn around and see how pretty I am." The hyena was looking at herself in the mirror and admiring Marie's face. She had eaten all around the face very carefully so that only what she needed remained. "You've been really neat," I said. Towards evening, when the hyena was all dressed up, she announced, I feel I'm in very good form. I think I'm going to be a big hit this evening." When we'd been hearing the music from below for some time, I said to her, "Go down now and remember not to go near my mother. She'd be sure to know it wasn't me. I don't know anybody apart from her. Good luck." I gave her a kiss as she left, but she smelled very strong. Night had fallen. Exhausted by the emotions of the day, I picked up a book and relaxed beside the open window. I remember I was reading Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. After about an hour came the first sign of bad luck. A bat came in through the window, uttering little cries. I am terribly frightened of bats. My teeth chattering, I hid behind a chair. Hardly was I on my knees before the beatings of wings was drowned out by a loud noise at my door. My mother came in, white with fury. She said, "We had just sat down at table when the thing that was in your place leapt up and cried out, 'I smell a bit strong, eh? Well, as for me, I don't eat cakes.' Then she snatched off her face and ate it. One big jump and she vanished out the window." And that is The Debutante by Leonora Carrington. We have a little bit of time left. I'm going to read a couple more stories. This is from Stalking the Intruder, the Bluebeard story from Women Who Run with Wolves, which is by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who is really quite an amazing storyteller, I have to say. But this is a short story, and then we're going to read a little piece of flash fiction about these stories are all about pretty brave and daring women. This is called The Dark Intruder Mate. Like Bluebeard, the psychic predator, in fact, a fact of the psyche, whether symbolized internally or actualized externally, shows up in many fairy tales, shows up time after time in women's dreams. The predator can erupt in the midst of a woman's most soulful and meaningful plans. It severs a woman from her intuitive nature. When its cutting work is done, it leaves the woman deadened in feeling frail to advance in her life. Her ideas and dreams lay scattered, drained of animation. All creatures must learn that there exist predators. Without this knowing, a woman is unable to negotiate safety within her own forest, without being devoured. To understand the predator is to become a mature animal who is not vulnerable out of naivete, inexperience, or foolishness. Psychologically, young girls and young boys are as though asleep about the fact that they themselves, because they are beautiful, they are considered by many and much to be prey. Although sometimes it seems life would be much easier and much less painful if all humans were born totally awake, we are not. We are all born all anlagen, like the potential at the center of a cell. In biology, the anlage is the part of a cell characterized as that which will become. Within the anlage is the substance which in time will cause us to become a complete someone. So this next story is by Kristen Andrychuk, who I believe is American but has Polish heritage, and it's from a lovely edited book called Flash Fiction. And this is just a delightful, very short story. It's called Mandy Shoop. I'm thinking about you today, Mandy Shoop. Thinking about you dancing on a picnic table at Crystal Beach. Wondering about the true story and how that image often comes to mind when things are bad for me. My mother told me about you when I was a little girl. Why? I don't know. Something to do with self-control? What sank in was that Mandy Shoop, a Mennonite, left the church and danced naked on a picnic table at Crystal Beach. Crystal Beach, longest roller coaster in the world, so the sign said. Bright pink castle, funhouse, and a crowded beach. Blacks from Buffalo, Negroes we called them then, flashy clothes and an aura of perfume, though mothers said they were poor, lived in slums, weren't treated well. Didn't look poor to me. And the gangs of teenagers, slicked back, duck-tailed hair, duck's ass, the less polite kids at school called it. The girls in shorts or tight skirts showing off all they had, as mother would say. The smells of popcorn, dust, and sweat mixing with the screams from the roller coaster and loop-de-loop. The dance hall with its chandeliers, dance band, laughing couples. I pictured you in your long gray clothes, leaving the Mennonite church, walking the 3 miles to Crystal Beach with a man. Even then, I knew somehow a man was involved. I saw you climbing up on the bench of the picnic table, the man giving you his hand. You take off the big gray bonnet and a small white organdy underbonnet, lay them neatly on the bench, with a shake of your head, uncoiling your dark hair, removing the long gray dress, the chemise, the heavy flannel petticoat, folding each garment neatly there on the bench, stepping from bench to table, the dancing slowly at first, then faster and faster as the people cheer. When I grew up, I knew this story was preposterous and asked my mother what she had told me as a child. The updated version was that you had left the church several years before and had become a loose woman. You were drunk out at Crystal Beach with a man, and you did dance naked on a picnic table. Well, I had the with a man part right, but I'm disappointed it took several years after you left the church. Though by now I can understand why it did. Disappointed by the drunk part, too, though I wonder about that. The people telling the story were teetotalers. If you'd had a drink, you'd be drunk. I still see you, Mandy, in full control, with a little smile on your face as you take off your clothes, which maybe weren't really Mennonite clothes, but in your head, I bet they were. I see you dancing through the warm, brightly lit night. That is Mandy Shoop by Kristen Andrychuk. And that is story time for Saturday, March 23rd. We're ending a little bit early, but I don't want to start a new story. I had an Isabel Allende story, but it's a story that is going to take us at least 25 minutes to read. And I don't want to start it and not be able to finish it before we're done, because I now have a dedication to making story time full and complete. And it might not last. We might do something longer, such as the Ear Trumpet by Leonora Carrington. And I'm going to stop the recording now.